Hi everyone, I'm Cindy Baldwin. I'm the author of the middle grade novel Where the Watermelons Grow, which came out from HarperCollins in July. And today I am here to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is how to create emotional resonance in our stories through using universal truths. So my daughter is 5 and she loves to read and she loves to be read to. And in the last not even year, in the last 9 months, she has listened to the entire Ramona Quimby series on audio, which is 20 hours of audio, 7 times, possibly a little bit more. I've honestly lost count. And it's kind of funny to me because there are a lot of things about the Ramona Quimby series that are pretty dated. One of my favorite scenes is in one of the early books, which was published in 1955, when Beezus and Mrs. Quimby have washed their hair and guests come unexpectedly to the door and they're completely scandalized that they might be seen with wet hair. And that just makes me laugh because that's such a 50s thing, and it does not translate well to a modern audience. But there's clearly something about these books that my 5-year-old, who was born in 2013, still deeply resonates with. So that's what I want to talk about today. What is it that makes some books, no matter what their genre is, classics, the kind of books that people want to read and reread and give to their children? What makes stories that we write today the kind of thing that people are going to want to keep reading in 50 years from now? What do all of these things have in common? And there's lots of answers to that question, but the one that we're going to talk about today is this idea of emotional resonance. So what exactly is emotional resonance? Well, I figured the best place to start with this explanation would be to start with the idea of acoustic resonance. According to Wikipedia, acoustic resonance is a phenomenon where acoustic systems amplify sound waves whose frequency matches one of its own natural frequencies of vibration. So in regular person terms, basically, if 2 sound waves are on the same frequency, they make each other louder because they match. So that's what acoustic resonance is. And as writers, we want to create emotional resonance. Just like acoustic resonance is 2 matching sound waves amplifying each other, we want to create stories that have feelings and experiences their reader is going to resonate with. They're going to echo in our readers and therefore become more powerful as a result of that. Some examples of emotionally resonant feelings in both classic and modern best-selling literature are the feeling of being a kid whose imagination is too big for her body and is always getting in trouble. You see this in a lot of kids' books, both modern and classic. Some good examples are the Ramona Quimby series or Anne Shirley in the Anne of Green Gables series. A modern example is the Clementine books, which are delightful chapter books. Another feeling is the feeling of wonder at discovering something new and magical. You see that in a lot of fantasies, especially portal fantasies, where a child goes from one world to another, like Narnia or Harry Potter. There's also the feeling of trying to accomplish something that feels much too big for you. That's in a lot of books. The one that came to mind as I was planning this is Lord of the Rings. This is not a book example, but my family watches the Lord of the Rings movies every Christmas. So we just watched them, and I think one of the most emotionally resonant scenes in all of film to me is in The Two Towers, when Sam is talking to Frodo about how the great stories happened, how everyone in the great stories had something that they thought that they could not accomplish, but then they did because they still had hope. And that every time I watch that scene, I just feel like, oh, I can live my life, I can accomplish things, I can get through whatever I'm struggling with, because that's an emotionally resonant feeling. Everybody knows what it's like to feel overwhelmed and like they can't possibly keep going. Everybody knows what it's like to lose hope. And it's really powerful when something from film or stories can resonate with those feelings in us. Another example, the feeling of being typecast or discriminated against. You see this in novels like The Hate U Give or Children of Blood and Bone, both of which are longtime bestsellers. Or the feeling of being lonely or an outcast. I noticed that still on the New York Times Young Adult Bestseller list is the novelization of the musical Dear Evan Hansen, which is all about being lonely and feeling like you don't have any friends. And that's a powerful feeling because everyone, including adults, sometimes feels deeply lonely and struggles with that feeling. So what role does truth play in creating emotionally resonant stories like this? When we keep truth at the core of our stories, we make readers feel like they are seen and known because we're sharing the truths of their lives through our stories. Children's and adults' lives are filled with a lot of different experiences, and a lot of them are difficult. Books that speak the truth about their lives can really help them, help readers not just to empathize with the protagonist, but also to process their own feelings and experiences. And truth doesn't have to be hard or depressing. Truth can hit any note on the emotional scale. It can be humor, sadness, poignancy, embarrassment, and so on. Recently, I haven't read the book yet, but my mom made me read a scene from the new Sophie Kinsella novel, Surprise Me, and it's a hilarious scene where the heroine is going to do a boudoir photo shoot to surprise her husband, and everything goes epically wrong, and much of the wrongness of the boudoir shoot is centered around her own insecurities about her body and feeling like she doesn't like the way she looks when she's photographed in lingerie. And I mean, it was hilarious and I laughed until I cried, but it also was so relatable because what woman, particularly if like the protagonist or like me, if you have had a child or more than one child, what woman doesn't feel insecure about her own body? So your truths and your emotional resonance, they don't have to just be deep and difficult themes. They can also be funny. A lot of the time when we really connect to humor, it's because it has resonated with something inside us. So I also wanted to talk for a minute about the role of own voices and proper representation in conveying truth in our stories so that they can become emotionally resonant. Emotionally resonant books provide a mirror for readers. They can show readers what they're feeling and experiencing, and they can help readers process those things because of that. And if we're writing outside our own experiences and we have not done the work to ensure that what we're writing is accurate, both emotionally and plot-wise, then our stories are not going to resonate with readers, and sometimes they can even hurt readers. I'm disabled. I have several chronic illnesses, and I have been sick since I was a child. When I was a preteen, there was a white wire rack of paperbacks in my public library that was all about disabled and sick children just like me. And I used to go to the library and just turn that rack around and read all the backs of the books and ask my mom if I could check them out. And my mom would never let me check them out. And at the time, I thought that that was annoying and I didn't really understand it. But as an adult, what I came to realize is that all of those books were about disabled heroines who either died or were miraculously cured. And my mom knew that those were not the stories that I needed to reflect my life. Those were not the things that I needed to help me process the difficult experiences that I was having. And it actually wasn't until I was an adult in my mid-20s that I read a book where I felt like I see myself in these characters, because it was the first book that I had ever read that dealt with chronic illness and really delved into some of the deepest, most painful thoughts and feelings that I had about my own illness. And I can't even tell you how powerful that book was in my mid-20s, because it was the first time that I truly picked up a book, and instead of trying to extrapolate my own experiences onto Frodo's or Harry Potter's, I felt like I could see myself. I could see me reflected in those pages, and it made me feel, even in my mid-20s, it made me feel less alone and more understood. Now, on the other hand, there's also been lots of books and movies that have dealt with chronic illness or disability that have deeply hurt me. There's a lot of disability narratives that center around the idea that disability is incompatible with happiness, and that it's better to sort of burn bright but brief. It's better to ignore your medical regimen because living that way is not really living a life, and that even if you die soon, that it's better to have lived before that. That is a deeply damaging message for both children and adults who are chronically ill. And every time, I mean, I have cried from movie trailers before because of messages like that, because already the whole world tells me that people like me are less than people and that people like me can't be happy. And to see that also from the stories that I turn to for comfort, that is incredibly painful. And very similar things are experienced by people in all sorts of marginalized groups across the world. When you're writing outside your experience, it's really crucial to do the work required to make sure that it is an accurate and sensitive and honest portrayal of the experience that you're writing about. Because if you don't do this, then you can end up with things that look like a person's experience, but as soon as they dive into that story, they realize that it's full of stereotypes or harmful messaging. And that is the last thing that any reader needs to find when they go to books, particularly books that they hope are going to resonate with their own experiences. This is also why, one of the reasons why own voices stories are really important, because a writer who has a lived experience with something is going to be able to bring nuance and accuracy to a story that a writer who doesn't have that experience is going to struggle much more to do. So as we're thinking about how to create emotionally resonant stories, it's important to remember that there are many ways that truth is important. Truth is important both to hit the right emotional notes and to ensure that we are not harming our readers through our representation of their experiences. So this is all well and good, but what if you aren't really sure what the truths at the core of your novel are? I want to spend the last few minutes talking about the idea of distilling the truth at the center of your story to help add emotional resonance and to help readers connect with it more strongly. Some examples of distilled truths in stories are from Harry Potter. Love is the world's most powerful force. From the classic novel A Little Princess, the way we choose to react to our circumstances can determine whether or not we find joy in them. From Lois Lowry's The Giver, we can't experience true joy and pleasure without also experiencing pain. From The Lord of the Rings, this one is a direct quote from the novel, even the smallest person can change the course of the future. So that distilling our truths like that can help us make sure that our stories are focused on the right things and that our stories are going to be able to resonate with our audiences. So what do you do if you aren't sure what the truths at the heart of your novel are? Well, I have a little exercise for you. And this can be done at any point in the writing process. You can do this while you're outlining or conceptualizing a novel. You can do it while you're drafting. You can do it while you're revising. No matter when you do it, it will help you to focus on these truths at the core of your story. And it will help you to bring them out more so that a reader is connecting with the emotional heart of your story more deeply. And this can also be done for any genre and any age category of story. This is not only for contemporary stories or character-driven stories. This can be done for anything. So the exercise that I want you to do is, first, I want you to take about 5 minutes, can be more or less, however much works for you, and I want you to do some free writing about your story. And as you free write, I want you to consider questions like, how is the protagonist's journey relatable to readers? And what is the emotional heart of your protagonist's journey? And are there any specific feelings or emotions that you really wanted to evoke in your readers, or even feelings or emotions that you felt as you planned or wrote this book that you want readers also to feel? And then once you've done that, once you've free written for a couple of minutes, I want you to, based on that free writing, I want you to make a list of the things that you think are emotionally resonant truths in your story. And it's okay if there's a lot. Most stories have a lot of different truths in them and a lot of different emotional resonance in them, whether that's emotional resonance within one scene or emotional resonance within the book as a whole. That's fine. But then after you have your list, I want you to try to narrow it down to one or two truths that you feel are the most important, that are the things that you can get rid of everything else on the list. And as long as a reader connected with these one or two things, then you feel like your novel will have succeeded. And you can play with the wording, you can do whatever you need to do. It can be as long or as short as you want. Though shorter does tend to, being able to say it in fewer words does tend to indicate that you have really found the heart of this truth and that you are really going to be able to create the most emotional resonance from it. But after you've done this, then you have the emotional truth at the heart of your story, and you have the thing that is going to help readers connect and resonate with your work. Once you've done these things, you have taken your novel to the next level of emotional connection, because emotionally resonant stories that are based on these universal truths are the kinds of stories that readers want to read again, that readers not only can't put down, but that they keep thinking about after the story's done. How many times have you heard someone say, I know a really great book by how much it stays with me after I finish reading? Those are the books that are emotionally resonant. Those are the books that people are still going to be interested in reading 10, 20, 50 years down the road. And those are the books that are going to help you connect to your readers in the deepest possible way. So good luck as you go forward in your writing and try to recognize the universal truths present in your story. I love this topic and it's been super fun to talk about it with you. Thanks. Bye.